That innocent banana in your fruit bowl? It's probably killed more people than most serial killers. The vanilla in your ice cream has a body count that would make a mob boss jealous. And don't even get me started on nutmeg. That little spice has literally started wars. Your kitchen isn't just a place where you burn toast and overcook pasta. It's basically a crime scene museum stocked with ingredients that have left a trail of colonization, slavery, and bloodshed spanning 5 centuries. So grab your favorite snack and settle in because we're about to ruin your grocery shopping forever. This is how your spice rack became humanity's most delicious monument to atrocity. That 79-cent banana you grabbed for breakfast? Congratulations, you're holding the fruit equivalent to a war trophy. Because to keep bananas cheap, sweet, and available year-round, Central America basically had to sacrifice its sovereignty to corporate overlords who made the Mafia look like a neighborhood book club. Meet the United Fruit Company, now cheerfully rebranded as Chiquita.
I'm Chiquita Banana and I've come to say bananas have to ripen in a certain way, and when they're flecked with brown...
Because apparently Banana Dictators Inc. was bad for marketing. In the early 20th century, these guys didn't just grow bananas, they owned entire countries. Guatemala, Honduras, Costa Rica, United Fruit controlled their ports, railroads, newspapers, and national banks. They literally turned sovereign nations into what we now call banana republics. Which sounds cute until you realize it means countries run by fruit companies. But here's where it gets really bananas. Pun absolutely intended. In 1954, Guatemala's president Jacobo Arbenez had the audacity to suggest that maybe, just maybe, unused land should go to poor farmers instead of collecting dust in corporate vaults. Well, United Fruit was not amused. They marched over to Washington and essentially said, "This guy's a communist." That 1950s equivalent of calling someone a witch. The CIA, apparently having nothing better to do, launched a full coup d'etat and toppled Arbenez faster than you can say banana split. What followed was decades of civil war, death squads, and repression that killed over 200,000 people, all because a fruit company didn't want to share their unused dirt. And the workers picking your breakfast? They were paid wages that would make sweatshop owners blush. Those brave enough to organize unions were jailed, exiled, or simply disappeared, because nothing says fresh fruit like labor suppression with a side of murder. So the next time you're enjoying that innocent-looking banana, remember it may taste sweet, but its history is absolutely rotten. You know the innocent pinch of nutmeg you sprinkle on your holiday eggnog? You're basically seasoning your drink with genocide. Because in the 1600s, this humble spice was considered so valuable that Europeans literally committed mass murder to control it. And by literally, I mean they actually did it, not the way teenagers use literally to mean I had a really big sandwich. Back then, nutmeg wasn't just a baking ingredient, it was essentially the iPhone of spices. People believed it could cure everything, from the plague to impotence, which explains why 17th century men were willing to sail across the world and commit war crimes for it. The only place you could get this miracle spice? The tiny Banda Islands of Indonesia, which were basically the Fort Knox of flavor. Enter the Dutch East India Company. Think Amazon, but with cannons and a casual attitude toward human rights. These corporate pioneers wanted a nutmeg monopoly so badly they made Jeff Bezos look like a community organizer. When the native Bandanese had the nerve to resist becoming corporate slaves, the Dutch decided the solution was simple: just delete the entire population. In 1621, under the cheerfully genocidal Jan Pieterszoon Cohen, Dutch forces massacred or enslaved nearly everyone. Of 15,000 natives, only about 1,000 survived. That's a 93% casualty rate, which would be impressive if it weren't absolutely horrifying. The survivors were replaced with enslaved labor from other islands, because nothing says sustainable business model like human trafficking. But here's my favorite part. The Dutch were so obsessed with nutmeg that they literally traded Manhattan, yes, the island that would become New York City, to the British in exchange for a nutmeg-rich island called Run. They traded one of the most valuable pieces of real estate in human history for a spice island. That's like trading your house for a really expensive salt shaker. So the next time you're enjoying Grandma's spice cake, remember, That warm, cozy flavor was once considered worth more than Manhattan and paid for with the blood of an entire civilization. Sweet dreams. The bottle of vanilla extract in your pantry costs more per ounce than most people's hourly wages, and somehow that's the least messed up thing about vanilla's story. Because the world's most basic flavor, sorry pumpkin spice girls, has a history so dark that it makes other spices look like they went to therapy. Vanilla started out as Mexico's little secret, pollinated by native bees who clearly had no idea that they were about to become accessories to centuries of exploitation. Then the French showed up in 1841, took one look at Madagascar and thought, you know what this tropical paradise needs? A vanilla plantation, run by enslaved people. Because apparently the French approach to international relations was colonize first, ask questions later. Fast forward to today, and Madagascar produces 80% of the world's vanilla while somehow managing to make the situation even worse. The crop has become so valuable that it's turned into agricultural fight club. Farmers literally sleep in their fields with machetes, not because they're method acting as medieval peasants, but because vanilla theft is more common than Netflix password sharing. We're talking about a spice so valuable that cartels have moved in. Yes, cartels. The same people who traffic drugs have decided that vanilla orchids are worth their time. Somewhere, a cartel boss is probably explaining to his mother that he's in the flavor-enhancing business. And the cherry on this exploitation sundae? Kids as young as 10 are skipping school to work the vanilla harvest because their families need the money. So while you're paying $20 for a tiny bottle of extract, which, let's be honest, you'll use twice before it expires, the farmer who spent months hand-pollinating those orchids might make a whole $1 from your purchase. It's the perfect vanilla irony. The world's most popular flavor leaves the most bitter taste when you know where it comes from. Here's a fun fact that'll ruin your next stress-eating session. There's a decent chance your chocolate was made by a kid who's never even tasted chocolate, because nothing says comfort food like knowing your sweet tooth might be funded by child trafficking. It's like a Hallmark movie, but in reverse and with significantly more human rights violations. Here's the math that'll ruin your next candy aisle visit. 70% of the world's cocoa comes from the Ivory Coast and Ghana, where children, some literally trafficked from countries like Mali and Burkina Faso, do the harvesting. We're talking about kids wielding machetes like they're in some dystopian agricultural horror movie, carrying 50-pound sacks that would make CrossFit enthusiasts weep, and applying toxic pesticides without protective gear because apparently child safety equipment wasn't in the corporate budget. These children often work barefoot for no pay, because nothing says sustainable business model like unpaid child labor with a side of potential poisoning. It's basically Oliver Twist, but with cocoa beans and even less adult supervision. Now here's where it gets really chocolatey. In 2001, major chocolate companies signed the Harkin-Engel Protocol, solemnly promising to end child labor. That was 20 years ago. You know what's changed since then? Your phone got smarter, your car got more efficient, and child labor and chocolate? Well, it's still there. Apparently ending child exploitation is harder than creating self-driving cars. Who knew? We've had lawsuits, exposés, documentaries, congressional hearings, and probably a few strongly worded tweets. The chocolate industry's response? We're working on it, which is corporate speak for we'll get around to it eventually, maybe, if it doesn't hurt profits too much. Sure, ethical sourcing exists. Fair trade chocolate is out there, looking all responsible and morally superior on the shelf, but it represents such a tiny fraction of global chocolate production that finding it is like playing Where's Waldo, except Waldo is basic human decency. So the next time you're unwrapping that chocolate bar, remember, there's a non-zero chance that somewhere in West Africa, a child who should be in school is working in the field so you can have your moment of sweet, sweet denial. Ever wonder why saffron costs more than your monthly coffee budget? Congratulations, you just bought the world's most overpriced flower parts, harvested by people who probably can't afford to eat what they're growing. It's called red gold, which sounds romantic until you realize it's because the profit margins are more brutal than actual gold mining. Here's a number that'll make you question everything. To get 1 pound of saffron, you need 75,000 crocus flowers. That's not a typo. 75,000 individual flowers, each blooming exactly once per year like some sort of agricultural diva. And every single delicate thread has to be hand-picked by workers who get up at 4 a.m. to spend their day bent over, like they're searching for dropped contact lenses in a field. In Iran and Kashmir, this back-breaking work is done almost entirely by women and children, because apparently the saffron industry looked at the other exploitative labor practices and thought, you know what this needs? More gender and age discrimination. These workers spend hours hunched over crocus flowers for the pricely sum of less than $2 a day, which means they're making less per hour than most people spend on a single saffron-infused dish. Meanwhile, by the time that same saffron reaches your local gourmet store, it's been marked up thousands of %. We're talking about a markup so obscene it makes pharmaceutical companies look charitable. Political instability, regional conflicts, and a chain of middlemen have created a system where the people doing the actual work live in poverty, while everyone else gets rich off their literally back-breaking labor. So the next time you're sprinkling that red gold into your risotto, remember, it's only golden for everyone except for the people who actually grow it. For them, it's more like red broke. So there you have it. Your spice rack isn't just a collection of flavor enhancers, it's basically a miniature museum of human suffering, with each jar representing centuries of exploitation, violence, and corporate greed. These ingredients didn't just change the world, they helped to burn it down and rebuild it in the image of whoever had the biggest ships and the least conscience. Thanks for watching. And remember, knowledge is power, but sometimes power tastes really, really bitter.